Have you ever noticed something strange? Two people can be the exact same age, both retired, living in the same neighborhood, dealing with the same aches, the same gray hair, and the same birthday candles that seem to multiply faster every single year. And yet, one of them looks alive. They have energy, curiosity, a spark behind their eyes. They laugh easily. They're excited about tomorrow. And the other person? They seem old. Not because of wrinkles, not because of their age, but because something inside them quietly stopped moving a long time ago. Maybe you already know exactly which person you want to become. Or maybe you're not sure yet which one you already are. Either way, stay with me until the end of this video, because what you're about to hear might completely change the way you think about getting older, and it might be the one thing that decides whether your next 10 years feel like a slow fade or the richest chapter you've ever lived. And that's the secret nobody really talks about. Getting older isn't what makes people old. Disengaging from life is what does it. Carl Jung understood something profound about human nature. He believed the second half of life was never meant to be a slow decline. It was meant to be a new adventure, a deeper one, a richer one than anything that came before. The problem is that most people spend decades preparing for retirement and almost no time at all preparing for what comes after it. Nobody hands you a manual for the day the structure disappears. So one day they wake up and think, now what? The alarm clock stops ringing. The meetings vanish. The kids are grown. The house grows quieter. And suddenly there's an enormous amount of empty space. More space than most people have faced since they were very young. Here's the interesting part. That empty space can become either loneliness or freedom. And very often the difference comes down to one simple thing: hobbies. Not just activities, not ways to pass the time, but hobbies that wake something up inside you. Hobbies that make your brain smile. Hobbies that remind you you're still growing, still learning, still alive. Today, we're exploring 7 hobbies that seem to keep people young well past 60. Some of them might surprise you. One is so simple that most people overlook it entirely. And according to many psychologists, it may be one of the strongest defenses against feeling old that exists. Let's begin with a hobby that has absolutely nothing to do with exercise, and yet it often makes people feel more alive than any gym membership ever could. The first hobby is learning something entirely new. A few years ago, a man named Walter retired after working for 40 straight years in the same industry. The kind of career where you know every face in the building and every shortcut on the commute. The first month felt wonderful. The second month felt relaxing. The third month felt strange. He found himself wandering into the kitchen, opening the refrigerator every 20 minutes. Not because he was hungry, just because he didn't know what else to do with himself. Have you ever done that? You walk into a room and forget why you went there, then somehow end up eating a cookie anyway. Life happens. Anyway, Walter started feeling restless. Not tired, not sick, just bored, in a way that surprised him, because he had spent years dreaming about exactly this kind of free time. Then one day, his granddaughter convinced him to take a beginner guitar class. His first reaction was, "I'm far too old for that." Which, by the way, is one of the biggest lies people tell themselves after 60. He couldn't play a single chord. His fingers ached. He sounded like a cat arguing with a lawnmower. But something interesting happened. He became excited again. Every week he improved a little. Every month he learned something new. His brain finally had a reason to wake up. And that's exactly what Carl Jung observed. Growth doesn't stop because you get older. People often get older simply because they stop growing. Learning creates anticipation. Anticipation creates energy. Energy creates youthfulness. Notice something. Children are always learning, always curious, always asking questions. Adults often stop, and the moment curiosity disappears, life starts feeling smaller. It doesn't have to be guitar. Maybe it's photography. Maybe it's cooking. Maybe it's painting. Maybe it's learning a new language. Maybe it's simply figuring out how your smartphone actually works without accidentally calling your cousin in another country. No judgment, we've all been there. The goal isn't mastery, the goal is curiosity. Because curiosity is what keeps the mind young. Let me ask you something. What's one thing you've always wanted to learn but never actually started? A language, an instrument, a skill you watched someone else master and quietly envied? Drop it in the comments below. You might inspire someone else to finally begin. Someone who's been waiting for permission they didn't realize they already had. If something about Walter's story is stirring something in you right now, drop 11. Curiosity is the architect of my mind, and I alone decide how young my spirit chooses to stay. And speaking of things people often overlook, the next hobby seems almost too simple, and yet many emotionally healthy older adults swear it changed their entire life. The second hobby is walking with purpose. Not exercise, not fitness, not counting steps. Walking with purpose. There's a real difference. You can walk because your doctor told you to, or you can walk because you're genuinely curious about what you'll discover. One sounds like homework. The other sounds like adventure. A woman named Dorothy developed a simple habit shortly after retiring, the kind of habit nobody would put in a magazine, yet it ended up reshaping her entire outlook. Every morning, she walked through her neighborhood, the same streets she had driven past for 30 years without really seeing them. But she gave herself a small challenge. Find one new thing every single day. One flower she'd never noticed before. One bird. One interesting house. One conversation. One funny little observation. Anything at all. Suddenly, the same streets became interesting again. Life became interesting again. And that's something so many people miss. The world doesn't necessarily become boring. We simply stop paying attention to it. Jung often emphasized awareness, being present, truly seeing life as it unfolds, rather than rushing past it on the way to somewhere else. And walking is one of the easiest ways to reconnect with the present moment, especially after 60, when the body finally has the time it never had before, and the mind, if it lets itself, can finally catch up. Because, let's be honest, most people spend decades rushing. Rushing to work, rushing home, rushing through weekends, rushing through entire years that later seem to blur together into one long, exhausting blur. Then, retirement arrives, and suddenly nobody knows how to slow down anymore. Because slowness was never practiced, never trained, never given any space to exist. Walking teaches you how. You start noticing details. You notice people. You notice life itself in all its small, ordinary, overlooked beauty. And something surprising happens. Your worries grow quieter. Your thoughts become clearer. Your mood lifts, not because your problems vanished, but because your attention finally shifted somewhere else, somewhere kinder. One retired gentleman joked that his daily walks saved his marriage. His wife asked him how. He said, "Because for 1 hour every morning, nobody can find me." Now, that's not exactly psychology, that's survival strategy. But there's real wisdom hiding inside it. Sometimes peace isn't found by adding more to your life, more activities, more obligations, more noise. Sometimes it's found by stepping outside, alone, with nowhere in particular to be, and simply taking a slow walk. And the next hobby takes this idea even further. In fact, it may be one of the most powerful ways to keep your spirit young, no matter your age, and almost nobody expects it. The third hobby is meaningful conversation. Now, this particular hobby doesn't usually show up on lists like this. Nobody wraps it in fancy packaging. Nobody sells expensive equipment for it. And yet, it might be one of the strongest anti-aging habits on this entire list. Having genuinely meaningful conversations, not small talk, not arguing online with someone whose profile picture is a cartoon dog. Real conversations. The kind where you walk away feeling lighter. The kind where somebody truly sees you, where you don't have to perform or summarize or explain yourself, where you can simply be heard. A lot of people retire and accidentally become isolated. Not because they want to, life simply changes around them. Co-workers disappear. Children get busy with their own lives, own children, their own chaos. Friends move away to be closer to grandchildren, or move south, or simply move on. Schedules stop overlapping the way they once did so naturally. And slowly, without anyone realizing it, entire days pass without a single genuine conversation. Days that fill up with errands and television and small interactions at the grocery store that don't really count as connection at all. Carl Jung believed human beings are deeply relational creatures. We discover ourselves through our connections with others, through being truly known by another person, flaws and all. And when those connections fade, something inside us can quietly begin to shrink, almost like a plant slowly losing access to light, not dying all at once, just dimming day by day in a way that's easy to miss from the inside. I remember hearing about a retired teacher named Eleanor. She wasn't lonely exactly, not in the obvious sense. She had family. She had neighbors who waved when she passed. But she missed real connection, the kind that goes deeper than a wave on the sidewalk. One day, she joined a small local discussion group. Nothing fancy, just people sharing stories, talking about life, talking about mistakes, talking about lessons learned, talking about everything from marriage to gardening disasters. Within months, people noticed something different about her. She laughed more, smiled more. She seemed younger, not because her face had changed, but because her spirit had. Have you ever noticed how energized you feel after a wonderful conversation? The kind that runs long because neither of you wants it to end. and how exhausted you feel after spending time with someone who complains about absolutely everything, draining the room without ever raising their voice. It's almost like emotional weather. Some people bring sunshine, others bring a thunderstorm, and then wonder why nobody wants to plan a picnic. The truth is simple. Connection keeps the heart young. So call an old friend you've been meaning to call for months. Join a group, even if walking into the first meeting feels a little awkward. Start conversations with people you've only ever nodded at. Share your stories, the real ones, not just the polished version. Listen deeply when someone else shares theirs, because every meaningful conversation reminds you that your life still matters, that you are still fully a part of the world around you. And the next hobby takes that feeling of connection and turns it into something even more powerful, because it doesn't just help you feel alive, it helps other people feel alive too. The fourth hobby is helping others. This one tends to surprise people. Many assume retirement is finally the time to focus entirely on themselves, after decades of putting everyone else first. And yes, rest is important. You've earned it. Nobody is arguing otherwise. But something fascinating happens when people spend all of their time thinking only about themselves. Life often becomes smaller. Problems become bigger. Days become longer, stretching out in a way that feels less like freedom and more like drifting. But when attention shifts outward, everything changes. A retired mechanic named Frank started volunteering at a community center, mostly because his daughter kept nudging him to get out of the house more. At first, he only planned to help once a week, just a few hours, nothing major, mostly fixing chairs and helping set up tables. Then something unexpected happened. Young people started asking him questions. They wanted his advice, his stories, his guidance. Things they couldn't get from a search engine. They wanted to learn from him. One afternoon, a teenager told him, "You remind me of the grandfather I never had." Frank said that single moment affected him more than he could ever properly explain, because he realized something. He still had something valuable to give. And that's one of the greatest human needs of all, to feel useful, to feel needed, to feel that your experience genuinely matters. That 40 years of knowing how engines work and how to talk to nervous teenagers wasn't wasted time. It was preparation for exactly this. Carl Jung often spoke about finding meaning, not happiness. Meaning, because happiness comes and goes, but meaning gives life depth. The kind of depth that doesn't disappear just because the weather changes or the day goes wrong. You don't have to save the world. Maybe it's helping at a church. Maybe it's mentoring someone just starting out in a career you spent